Well, you're here with Annika, Geordie and Omar. It's Wednesday the 17th. A couple of days ago, a really horrific massacre took place on Bondi Beach. And so we thought we'd do an episode to respond to, well, one, the terrible scenes and the horrific loss of life, but then also the political response and fallout to this. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty fucked up. We were in a meeting at the time and just the news was on in the background and then massacres going on. And your heart just sinks for the people there. And then also the political impact that we know every time these kind of massacres, opportunist politicians begin to pile on. So a bit of a different tone this week. We're not going to be making very many jokes. It's not a very funny moment in Australian or world politics.
Yeah, there was an article I was reading by a Jewish socialist writer, and he was sort of talking about how, like, as the news rolled in, every sort of horrible thing that you were thinking sort of did just, like, transpire. Totally. Like, so many people dead.
Yeah.
And also, you know, just like what Omar said, society is going to be different coming out of this. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess one of the things about the stories that came out over time was how, you know, amidst all the horror, there had been these kind of cool acts of incredible humanity, which has been nice to highlight. Like there's been some attempts to highlight them from more anti-racist people, like obviously Ahmed al-Ahmad's brave wrestling of the guy with the gun. You know, you shouldn't have to be a hero as a Muslim, but it's nice when this kind of shit happens that a Muslim figure did something so positive and, you know, interrupted the narrative. But then also, you know, some of the victims themselves have pretty cool stories. I don't know if you guys want to share some of them.
Yeah, there was the Holocaust survivor who shielded his wife, and he was unfortunately killed, but she lived.
She lived.
And the first people who were actually shot and killed were a Russian couple, like a Jewish Russian couple, who just flung themselves at one of the shooters to attempt to disarm the shooter. And
it's crazy. They were just walking down the street and saw a guy get out of a car with a fucking gun.
Yeah.
And was like,
and
that's not on.
Him.
Yeah. Incredible.
But yeah, it's like it's the biggest anti-Semitic attack that's, you know, happened in Australia's
probably ever.
History.
Yeah.
And there was an Anthony Lowenstein podcast where he did describe it as a pogrom, like reminiscent of the violent attacks on Jewish people that have taken place throughout history. And in a speech, someone who was talking from the Jewish Council of Australia was talking about the sort of way that throughout history Jewish people have had to, like, fight for themselves, resist and sort of hold on to their culture against, you know, people who have tried to build movements and political ideologies and all the rest of it, attacking them. And yeah, there's been obviously the fact that the shooters targeted an event that was a Hanukkah event by the sea, families, but then also just all of the people in Bondi as well who were just there, like a mass shooting event taking place. Yeah, the horror of it is like pretty immense.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a very widespread condemnation of anti-Semitism in the aftermath, and there clearly has been, because like the Palestine movement itself is totally not racist, right? It's confidently inclusive, anti-racist, anti-imperialist, anti-war. But not everybody is involved in the movement, and not everybody, you know. And so what's been happening in Israel and has just escalated tensions. And there are idiots who think that every Jew in the world is somehow implicated in what happens in Israel or anything like that. So there has been, like, even though there's been a lot of bullshit about, you know, fake anti-Semitism, like the caravan hoax and whatever, there has been conspiracy theories and so on that have grown, and there have been attacks on Jewish institutions in a range of places. And so, you know, the government and all political actors have rightly condemned anti-Semitism, which I think is correct. And I think it was actually positive that the government themselves highlighted the heroism of Ahmed al-Ahmad, because even before, like, Albanese made it the first statement. Bob Katter and Pauline Hanson had already put out pretty incendiary stuff online.
Yeah, that's right.
Which we can get to in a second. So that's been one. So there's been a sort of like response which is correctly denouncing anti-Semitism and then trying to make a case against anti-migrant and Islamophobic kind of backlash. And then the other thing the Labor Party's done is talk about gun laws, which is interesting. And Jordy, you'd said you've been doing some research about some of the specificities of this.
Yeah, I think the context is really interesting about particularly the Labor Party talking about cracking down on gun ownership in particular, because, we've all seen footage of Minn's, or not footage, like reports of Minn's doing deals with the Shooters and Fishers party to, de-restrict certain gun laws and stuff in order to get some votes in various elections and whatever, the last one specifically. But then we also saw, Pauline Hanson and Barnaby Joyce effectively be the only ones cheered and clapped when they showed up, to pay their condolences at the memorial the next day. And there was a massive Four Corners report on them, doing a deal with the fucking NRA to lobby for...
They've gotten heaps of political funding.
From the
NRA
lobby. To these people they want to de-restrict gun laws in this country.
But then the writer really tried to take the conversation in a totally different direction, because they support gun control, or gun ownership and proliferation, basically. Yeah. So and their classic argument is guns don't kill people, people kill people.
Yeah, or rather brown people kill people.
Yeah. And so I think the Bob Katter response for me was particularly sharp because he came out and basically said we need to stop all immigration. And I think his slogan was no immigration without assimilation.
Yeah, in caps and italics.
Yeah, so these ghouls, these absolute monsters, they don't feel any sadness or grief or concern for society or anything like that. They're the most kind of gleeful opportunists.
Yeah, it's like, how can we use this as an opportunity to put forward our anti-human politics? Because it is anti-human. Omar talked about how the Palestine movement has always been sort of an anti-racist movement, but in its heart, it's a movement that's saying no person should suffer senseless violence in the interests of in the interests of a nation state like Israel or whatever. But the right that are trying to make mileage off of this don't give a single fuck about ordinary people, and they want to create more racism in society because they want to create a larger electoral base for themselves so that they can win positions in parliament.
Yeah, and I think particularly with what's interesting about the Bob Katter comment and the Pauline Hanson statement was how soon they came out. They were almost immediate. I remember we were talking in our chat and, I'd posted this is horrific kind of thing. And then about an hour later, I just saw, because I was on Twitter, just all these right-wingers just coming out with statements, knowing absolutely nothing about the shooter or anything like that, and just being fuck immation kind of stuff. And then Bob Katter, Pauline Hanson.
Tony Abbott, let's not import hate.
Totally. Yeah.
Says the guy who spends half his life in America hanging out with Trump and the Heritage Foundation.
Totally. And then, Pauline Hanson with, Trump as well. But because Pauline's one was slightly different to Bob Katter's, because Pauline's was the anti-Semitic protests on the Harbour Bridge of what's done this kind of thing. This person would have had absolutely no place in a protest like that. And then, Bob Katter is just explicitly, well, I guess they're both explicitly anti-migration statements.
I mean, ISIS have never attacked Israel, the vast majority of ISIS has been targeting Muslims and Arabs and Kurds in the Middle East between Syria and Iraq. And I mean, ISIS only exists because of the American invasion of Iraq and then the repression that the Syrian regime meted out to the revolution there. So ISIS is a product of imperialism and and counter-revolution, all of which is like just capitalism. Which is not to say that but then the point is that ISIS is not anti-imperialist or revolutionary. They're utterly reactionary. They've never attacked, the West seriously. They've never attacked institutions of power. They've mostly just enslaved the people of the areas in which they work, and then occasionally attack sort of random unrelated civilians in the West. So this is it's sort of a symptom of capitalism, barbarity, imperialism, but it's not a response to it that's healthy in any way. It's utterly, it's just a reactionary sort of excrement of capitalism.
And I think like the point that ISIS is a sort of result of the invasions of Iraq, the question of how can something like this happen, going back to, the anti-Semitic shooting in Bondi, well, part of the reason why any mass shootings happen in Australia, in America, wherever, is because capitalism itself is a barbaric, violent system that valorizes violence as well. Like, who are the sort of heroes of, Australian and American societies? It's like the people who have done, plundering,
Ben Robert Smith.
Exactly, yeah. These animals that go out and, murder black and brown people in the Middle East, or, who set up the Australian state or set up the American state. So our society actually, it raises up violence as, something that's important, courageous, whatever. But then also just the world around us today is generally just anti-human, barbaric. So I'm not obviously excusing what happened, but it's like I think you do have to put like public shootings like this in the context of a violent society.
Yeah, and it keeps getting worse, right? Like, why is America just this place where people get killed constantly? It's because there's no society. Like, society's broken down in America, and Australia, has not been like that. And this is kind of shocking, precisely because mass shootings are so rare here. And so, yeah, capitalism creates a situation where life seems cheap, and insane maniacs, murderous people think that it's normal and legitimate to do what they do. And so, yeah, it's tragic, and it's a reminder of what kind of world we need to be fighting for where this kind of shit doesn't happen. But that's not at all how the right have responded, going back to that. So the anti-migrant racism is one part of it, and then the other thing is Israel, like support for Israel. So, these Jews did not, they were attending a religious, a cultural event. But then Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, comes out again within an hour or two and just claims that, Israel is the only shield for these people. And this is all just a product of support for Palestine. And he blames the Australian government because they recognize Palestinian statehood, which was the most meaningless symbolic thing. But as if that is somehow to blame for these people, and there's no evidence these people even support Palestine. So, but it's just the attempt to kind of conflate anti-war protesters with this mass shooting.
There was a really good quote from Dave Zirin, who's an American Jewish socialist. He actually usually writes about sports, but this article that he wrote about the shooting was just really moving. But he wrote that the dead have one use to these people. They exist to justify Israel's conquest of Gaza and the Palestinian blood that will now surely be shed. And I think that's important because Netanyahu and the political right who want to campaign around this, they don't care about the individuals who were murdered. The young girl, Matilda, who was 10 years old, that doesn't matter to them. The thing that matters is that there's been a political opening now that exists where they can demonize and attack the pro-Palestine movement and try and use it to blame, use it to be the cause of what happened.
Like the idea that 300,000 people marching to end a massacre is somehow to blame for this massacre requires the most perverted logical contortions. So it's dishonest. It's obviously not what he believes. It's just any excuse possible to ram a pro-Israel narrative into the mainstream. And that's what these idiots have done. These, apart from just massacring these innocent people, they've just given the right a free kick. And that's why socialists have always been against terrorism. Because, even when it's like these people are just fuckwits, ISIS scum. But like even when it's sort of progressive, like left-wing terrorism going back like centuries, it's always counterproductive. It never works, and just gives the enemy an absolute free kick, and which is what we're seeing now. Josh Frydenberg came out and said Albanese's personally responsible for these deaths.
Crazy.
Like really crazy, which, you know, this kind of rhetoric indicates that these people are cynically calculating how they can make the most political advantage of this moment and suppress the Palestine movement, anything that's vaguely... Even Albanese is just trying to be sort of neutral on the genocide. That's his public persona, even though really we all know he supported it. Even that is unacceptable in this moment. You know, arming Israel while saying you support Palestine, for Josh Frydenberg, that's an extremist position that's responsible for a massacre. So that's where we're at right now. The left just has to hold the line and say, yes, we're absolutely against this massacre. We're against all massacres. Yeah. That's our position. That's our stance, not yours. Josh Frydenberg was part of a party that organized the Iraq War, the Afghanistan War. Like, who is he to lecture us on peace and non-violence?
Exactly. And the context of his statement as well is like, this man has been out of the public eye for years. This is his return to the public, is to, like, you know, I don't even know, like, score points against the Labor Party.
Yeah, and I mean, similarly, John Howard, who wanted to come out and sort of say, oh, well, yeah, I did the gun law reform, but now that Albanese is talking about it, it is all just deflection. What he really should be talking about is how he's done nothing to action the Segal report. You know, Julian Segal being the anti-Semitism envoy that Albanese appointed in the context of the genocide taking place in Gaza. And really, like... I don't understand how anyone could think the Segal report would have stopped, like acting upon it would have stopped the massacre in Bondi. Because it's like, what actually were her recommendations? It was she should be the, like, you know, sole arbiter of what the media is allowed to say, that there should be a scorecard on universities, you know, about how many Palestine protests are happening, basically, that the universities have to adopt the IHRA definition on anti-Semitism, which conflates Israel with you know, anti-Israel sentiment with anti-Semitism. What the hell has that got to do with this? This was a violent anti-Semitic attack. It had nothing to do with the movement for Palestine.
No, and like Julian Segal refuses to come out and critique the fucking Nazis who organised the protest in front of the New South Wales Parliament, saying what, abolish the Jewish lobby? Was that their slogan?
Yes.
So, you know, like ISIS have much more in common with Nazis than they do with the left that's organised the pro-Palestine movement for 2 years. Like, let's be real. So I just think, you know, these people have no credibility in our eyes, obviously, but unfortunately they're on the front foot now. And so, you know, all these things that even the Labor Party, because the Labor Party appointed her, but then she did this report, which was a massive overreach. Everybody declared it an overreach, even the fucking Age, which supports, you know, Israel all the way down the line. They were saying like, this is too much. And the government buried the report, and I think they never planned to do anything about it. But now, because of this stuff, that she feels like she's back, you know, her political career is back. The woman who like, whose household income is using to be funding Advance Australia and, you know, basically white South African export. Like, she feels like she's in a position to lecture Australia now about racism and so on. She
literally, like, explicitly in her statement immediately came out and blamed what happened here on the Sydney Opera House march, the March for Humanity. Like, that is, like, lots of people have drawn the link, or like a link, but they've never been like, first there was the Sydney Harbour Bridge March, then death. Like, that is a ridiculous statement to make. Also, then in subsequent interviews have been like, well, this is all because they didn't implement the plan. Nothing, like literally not a single thing. Like, if you look at all of the reports on, you know, the background of these two men, how they were radicalized or whatever, it didn't happen on a university campus or on, you know, a fucking Harbour Bridge march against a genocide.
Or in like the opera scene and the arts and cultural industry.
Definitely not.
To discipline and censor as well.
Yeah, it's just like, it's absolutely outrageous. It's,
Yeah, so I think in the aftermath of this, there's been a number of really positive statements from a range of different organisations. The Loud Jew Collective put out a statement saying this is not the time to be let the politicians and the right wing divide us and spread hate. An organisation called Jewish Voices of Inner Sydney, which I'd never heard of before this, put out a statement saying we don't want this to turn into a culture war, and defiantly insisting that the Palestine movement have nothing to do with what went on. And I think, and you know, the Socialist Party's obviously put out a statement. But probably like the most widely viewed has been the Palestine Action Group's one.
Yeah.
Yeah. They wrote, this movement, which has always rejected anti-Semitism and all other forms of racism, has been a shining example of unity and a rejection of racist division. Silencing protests will not create unity or safety. It will entrench injustice, deepen division, and hand the state sweeping powers to shut down dissent on any issue it chooses. And I think it's important that they highlighted that, both the way that the Palestine movement has been about a rejection of oppression, but then also how the sort of response from the right is going to create an even deeper entrenching of injustice and oppression. Because we've talked about the way that the political right has responded, but also Chris Minn has come out and said now that basically they're going to be refusing to give approval for protests in the immediate sort of future, saying that there needs to be a summer of calm.
We can also see already stuff that's happened, like literally on the day itself. Like this isn't, you know, the right responding or anything. This is just like a like at the time of the like horrific attack, like, you know, an asylum seeker intervened and was shot at by police and, you know, assaulted by the public and declared the third gunman or whatever, like purely because he was brown. And then, you know, in the day after, the pigs' heads being placed on a Muslim cemetery. I saw a flyer going around talking about a second Cronulla bashing people and whatever. But yeah, like we know exactly what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
So I think in like moments like these, we need to think of how could you actually create a society where massacres like this and racist attacks like this didn't happen. And I think to get there, you need a society that isn't like sort of founded on hierarchies of, you know, oppression, that isn't founded on violence like we talked about before. We actually need to fight for a society of like justice, basically. And I think like a left-wing socialist message actually is really important in times like this. There's a rejection of the sort of like knee-jerk blaming on, you know, the Palestine movements, the moves from the government, whatever. The left actually has answers to this, which is, you know, sort of what I've sort of said already, a society that's free of racism and violence, a society that's free of capitalism.
Yeah, an end to war. As long as war is a celebrated part of human existence and a recurring part and a visible and televised and celebrated part, then there's always going to be a minority of people who, you know, want to act that out in whatever way, in whatever deranged way they see. And so as long as war exists, as long as racism exists, you know, you're going to get these kind of manifestations. And so I really agree with that. And like, it's a difficult situation right now. Like all our listeners, you know, exercise discipline, basically. Don't say stupid shit online. You know, this is much more serious than the Charlie Kirk thing or whatever. It's happening here. It's targeted a whole group of people who, you know, did nothing wrong other than to be Jewish. So this is not the time for stupid conspiracy theories or just like, you know, jokes or whatever. This is, you know, we are under, like, Jewish people are under attack, and then now the left and the Palestine movement's under attack. So we need to be smart and serious in how we respond and insist that our movement has nothing to do with what happened, and we are going to continue to positively defend the right to stand up against war and genocide and for free speech.
Yeah. And I think, you know, sort of thinking about what the Jewish Council Australia argued, that this is a time for unity and solidarity between all oppressed groups. We need to band together and really reject the attempts to use this horrific moment as a way to ramp up Islamophobia, anti-Semitism and oppression.